Hi, I'm not quite sure how to begin with this review. So the first thing I think I'm going to do is tell you a line from the last part of this book, 99% into the book, mother talking to daughter. This is your lineage, my dear daughter, your history, more powerful than blood. The story of those sisters and what happened in Montgomery in 1973 is a history you share with people you have never met. They are your family as much as I am your family. Okay, so I'm going to put the book cover up now. It's called Take My Hand, and the author is Dolen Perkins-Valdez. I am not always one to read a blurb when I get asked to do a blog tour. I will only read a couple of lines, and if it looks like it's something that I want, then I usually go for it, and that's what I did with this book. The next thing I want to do in this review is talk about, let's see, I got a cat on my desk. I want to talk about the COVID vaccine and African Americans, as well as COVID itself. Now, let's just read something from JAMAnetwork.com. It says, across the United States, Black and African American communities have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19 with higher case rates, more deaths, and more severe economic effects than other racial and ethnic communities. Okay? This article also talks about COVID vaccine hesitancy among the Black population. It took my daughter to tell me about this when I was talking to her this morning, and we're talking about our vacation coming up in August, and I was really sad, and she was wondering why I was so sad. And I said, well, I'm reading this book called Take My Hand, and I told her a little bit about the book, and then I told her the next part that I'm going to talk to you about this in this review. I told her about the Tuskegee study of untreated, this is what it was called, and then I'll tell you what it is called. It was called Tuskegee Study of Untreated Syphilis in the Negro Male, and then it was renamed the Tuskegee Study or the Syphilis Study. They took the Negro Male out of the name. This was a supposedly 6-month study, but the study went on for 40 years, from 1932 to 1972. What was the study? You heard me say the word syphilis at least twice, right? Okay, there was 399 Black men that all had syphilis. They were told that they were going to be used in a study and they would be treated for this disease. Well, they weren't treated for the disease. As a matter of fact, they were given placebos and any other experimental things that the government and doctors could use to test the viability of this disease by using poor, uneducated Black men, or even the Black men that went to that university in the study. Well, over 100 men died in that study. And this 6-month study went on for 40 years before it finally went to federal court and was stopped. Then we have this book, Take My Hand. Now, for Take My Hand, I'm going to go over to the author's note. I'm not going to read the entire author's note, but I am going to read a little bit of it. It says, this novel is a work of fiction loosely inspired by the real-life case of Ralph versus Weinberger. In June 1973, Minnie Lee and Mary Alice Ralph, sisters aged 12 and 14, were sterilized without their consent in Montgomery, Alabama, by a federally funded agency. Outraged by this terrible violation, their social worker, Jessie Bly, reported it to a local attorney. Eventually, the case went to federal court in Washington, D.C., and the lawyer was Joseph Levin. And as a matter of fact, Joseph Levin and Jesse Bly are still alive. This was in 1973. This was 1 year after the Associated Press revealed what the federal government did to the black men in rural Alabama and left them untreated for syphilis. So this all brought up national discussions about medical ethics, racism, and how this could happen in plain sight. Now, what it was, and I don't know if I can find it here in this book. I may not be able to find it because I didn't highlight anything. But I did find it. This was a medical situation where society deemed poor, black, and disabled as categories for women that were unfit for motherhood. So there was a sterilization program. Okay? Now, let's learn about this book, Take My Hand, which, like we said, it's a fictional story, but it's based on that real court case, okay? And I'm going to go into the blurb. It said, inspired by true events that rocked the nation, a profoundly moving novel about a black nurse in post-segregation Alabama who blows the whistle on a terrible wrong done to her patients, from the New York Times bestselling author of Wench. I've never heard of the author here, and again, her name is Dolen Perkins-Valdez. Montgomery, Alabama, 1973. Fresh out of nursing school, Sybil Townsend has big plans to make a difference, especially in her African American community. At the Montgomery Family Planning Clinic, she intends to help women make their own choices for their lives and bodies. But when her first week on the job takes her down a dusty country road to a worn-down, one-room cabin, she's shocked to learn that her new patients are children, just 11 and 13 years old. Neither of the Williams sisters has even kissed a boy, but they are poor and black. And for those handling the family's welfare benefits, that's reason enough to have the girls on birth control. As Sybil grapples with her role, she takes India, Erica, and their family into her heart, until one day she arrives at the door to keep the unthinkable, to find out or to learn the unthinkable has happened, and nothing will ever be the same for any of them. Decades later, with her daughter grown and a long career in her wake, Dr. Sybil Townsend is ready to retire, to find her peace and to leave the past behind. But there are people and stories that refuse to be forgotten, that must not be forgotten, because history repeats what we don't remember. When I said history repeats what we don't remember how I started this review talking about the impact that COVID has had on African Americans. I only touched it like with the little tip of my fingernail, because there's that much more to say that I don't have time to say. Now, in this fictional book, we have the very emotionally moving story of two little girls who were being forced to have to take birth control shots. And what they were doing is they were doing two things. One is they were working on sterilizing poor black and disabled children or people, but they were also experimenting. And our protagonist, Dr. Sybil Townsend, well, she's a doctor now, but back in 1973, she was a nurse, fresh out of nursing school. Her first job was to work with families and to give birth control shots. Well, one of the first cases she got was those two little girls, 11 and 13. They weren't sexually active. They lived in the sticks. They never even kissed a boy. But then that wasn't the worst part of it. And I won't even tell you the worst part. But there was a worst part. And this worst part became the beginning to reforming reproductive rights all across the country. Oh, I think I was reading I don't know if I was reading, I don't know if I finished reading the blurb. I'm just talking. I'm sorry. I'm just talking and I'm looking at my laptop and trying not to cry and going through a bunch of different emotions right now. All right. So instead of looking at my laptop, let me look at my camera. Hi guys. I'm sorry. I just got caught up in talking. Okay. So civil is somebody who is supposed to be a professional. Okay. In her professional capacity, she's going from house to house working with patients. However, this one particular family really touches her heart. You have two sisters, Erica and India. And India was mute. And the girls on the one hand were as different as night and day, but on the other hand were closer than close. They were only little girls, 11 and 13 years old in the book, in the fictional version of this true historical event. And what this family experienced based on their ignorance, and I say that in the kindest way possible because of illiteracy, things were forced on them that should have never, ever been forced. I'm moving in a weird way because I'm holding down my cat while I'm talking to you guys. I'm going to try to let him go. Hopefully he won't rise up and hit the laptop. Now, the girls' case, what happened to the girls, which is what I'm leaving out of this review, it did go as high as federal court. Not as high as the Supreme Court, but it went as high as federal court. Now, this forced birth control affected not just women of black, African American women of color, but Native Americans, other minorities, and even mentally challenged minorities. Like I said, India was mute. The powers that be deemed these people didn't have a right to reproduce, so they were going to stop it before it could even start, which is why these little girls at 11 and 13 were being sterilized. Now, like I said, because I read this book, the only thing that I knew about Tuskegee was the Tuskegee Airmen, but I didn't know about the Tuskegee study regarding syphilis. So this book was instrumental in teaching me about that. Reading about that makes you think about COVID. And if you watch, I think it was Station 19 and possibly Grey's Anatomy, one of those episodes or in a, combined episodes, they really talked about how Black people were affected by COVID. I think they even dealt with it on The Good Doctor and probably other medical shows, because Black people, African Americans, do not get the proper medical care even till today. As a matter of fact, in our day, we hesitate to get medical assistance. I feel, and many feel, and I'm not speaking for everybody, but many of us feel that we're judged even before we set our first foot in the door. And sometimes, like I have a very good friend who went to the ER about 3 days ago. She was there for 7 hours and didn't get treated, only to have to be hospitalized the next day because of an urgent situation. And her health is very precarious. It's not COVID or anything like that, but 7 hours she was there and not given any respect. And she told me how they treated her. That's just an example of something that happened to somebody near and dear to me right now, a Black person like myself. I can't think of much else to say. Trying not to cry during this review. But another thing the book talks about is they do this even to this day. Like if you read more of the author's note at the end of the book, you'll find out they're doing this in prisons. And there's even a law that allows them to do this to prisoners. They're doing this to immigrants, people that are crossing the border. people that are detained by immigrations and custom enforcement, ICE. We've all heard of ICE. These people are being forcibly sterilized. And if it weren't for whistleblowers, it first of all, it might still be going on, but it might have been hidden if not for whistleblowers. Those are things that I was reading about. So that is, what is this book? Take My Hand by, I want to get her name right. I know it's Dolen Valdez, but her first name is, Dolen Perkins-Valdez. Take My Hand by Dolen Perkins-Valdez. Unbelievable. And another thing I want to say too is this author didn't just do like I did and Google things and, went to this site and went to that site. She actually went to Alabama, Montgomery, and she met with that lawyer and with that social worker. And even though a lot of the book was fictionalized, a heck of a lot of it was based on actual history. Okay? Now, I do want to see, it looks like she wrote a book called Wench. Oh, she might be she did the introduction to 12 Years a Slave. I read that by Solomon Northup. She did the intro to that one. She wrote a book called Wench called Bomb. And then this one, Take My Hand. So keep this author in mind, because she's brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant in how she wrote this book. So that's about it for now. I'm going to go ahead and edit this book review, and I think I'm going to go ahead and load it. I think I'm going to put it up today. Let's see if it's out now. Yes, it came out on the 12th, so this will go up today. And as far as where you can get this book, you can get this book on Amazon. It's $14.99, but you can also get it on Audible, probably even through your library. I'm not sure, but definitely look for it. Definitely look for it. It's well worth reading, because this is very, very the author, the character, Sybil, said to her daughter. And I just reiterate that. What did she say? She said, this is your lineage, your history, more powerful than blood. The story of those sisters and what happened in Montgomery in 1973 is a history you share with people you never even met. They are your family as much as I am your family. So just keep that in mind. I'm sorry, I just had to close with that. I know I already said it, but that's it. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.